And then I'm going to get into Bessemer, Alabama union talks and why I'm super fucking triggered by the New York Times Daily. Everybody's talking at me. Jesus Christ. Am I going to get DMC? La 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 my man. Okay, come on, Vice. What the fuck is this, bro? They made a fucking movie out of this shit.
It's rush hour at Penn Station, New York's busiest and least aesthetically appealing railway center. The trains I take pass through here, along with the trains of 500,000 others every day, which is connected to New York and the rest of the Northeast by one little tunnel built in 1910 in drastic need of repair, just like the rest of America's infrastructure. Amtrak's North River Tunnel has 2 tracks, the only rail lines under the Hudson connecting New York City to the rest of the country. This bottleneck gets even worse at winter when ice forms in cracks left by Hurricane Sandy and 100 years of general wear and tear, forcing Amtrak to periodically shut down the tunnels and defrost their catenary electrical lines.
We're actually looking around the wire. Usually there's icicles. Once we see it, we stop and we knock it down.
This icicle here could trip out the catenary, could knock the wire down, a train could come in, then you have 600 people here stranded, and you got no power, and people are freezing on the train for hours. If we keep up with the ice, it won't happen. If we don't, it'll happen a lot. Oh, look at that, right there. That's a perfect spot.
Why is all infrastructure centered around where New Yorkers can go? Are you fucking stupid? This is one element of infrastructure, but obviously... and northeastern infrastructure is going to focus on fucking hubs where most people live. Like, I'm sorry that like your fucking Connecticut backyard is not getting as much play on an argument being made about infrastructure. Like, oh, I don't understand. Why aren't they talking about Maine? I'm so confused. Like right now.
Hold on. Careful. All right, everybody all right?
That's what happens.
What happens? An outage, right? Yeah. So we'll call the PD right now. Hey, did you lose the south tube? No? Okay, we're almost done in here. A lot of ice.
Ice scraping and other emergency maintenance keeps the North River Tunnel in service, at least for now. But it's a band-aid solution to the complete overhaul the tunnel needs to make it through its second century intact.
This thing needs to be rebuilt, essentially, from the inside out. So the idea here is to build a new tunnel, shift all the traffic into the new tunnel so that we can then come back and rebuild these so that when all is said and done, you have 4 tracks under the Hudson.
A 4-track Hudson rail line is one of the goals of the Gateway program. While the new tunnel is still waiting for full funding, the old one puts as much as 20% of the entire country's GDP in jeopardy every time it has to be closed, which is frequently.
Chaos and confusion at Penn Station last night.
Transit problems at Penn Station again.
The North River Tunnel needs federal money to help cover its estimated $13 billion price tag, a number that goes up by over $1 million every day they put off digging. Fortunately, the guy we elected president made a big deal out of allocating big money to big infrastructure projects just like this one.
We need to pass a $1 trillion infrastructure plan to build new roads and bridges and airports and tunnels and highways.
Yo, I can't believe that like Republicans are fucking losing their shit. And this dude literally, fuck you. This dude literally is, I mean, Republicans advocated for a $1 trillion infrastructure plan, which is bullshit. It never was going to happen, obviously. But like, it's wild that now they're shitting on the $2 trillion Democratic infrastructure plan.
And railways all across our great nation.
Turning that vague promise into an actual plan was delegated to businessman and former member of the U.S.-China Congressional Commission, Dan Slane. Slane produced a list of 50 infrastructure projects for the Trump transition team to consider, prioritized by their urgency and national importance.
My plan was to search out the most critical projects that we could start with, then define how many jobs would be created by those, what the economic development benefit was, so that I could go up to Congress, give them the estimates, and then the following year go back and give them the actual numbers. That was the plan.
Why did FEMA approach you for an infrastructure plan?
Because I knew a lot about China. I studied what China did when their economy would start to dip. They switched over to infrastructure. They started building railroads, hospitals.
Oh, interesting. What a strange and interesting take. Wow. So robust infrastructure plans actually end up significantly helping the economy improve. Who would have thought?
Power stations
It's communism,
all over
brother.
Eastern China. Billions of dollars that they poured into their country. And then when the economy picked up again, they stopped. And I saw the power of infrastructure. Our economy for the last 10 years has been stagnating. There's only two ways to grow your economy. You increase employment or you increase productivity. Infrastructure does both.
Unlike China, however, the United States hasn't tapped into the full economy-saving power of infrastructure since the middle of the last century, both in terms of building new stuff and keeping the old stuff in working order. And it shows.
Now, we just inspected this bridge last year. There you can see the extent of the deterioration. See the hole? That's called the floor beam. That actually is a fracture critical member. Fracture critical means if one member fails, the bridge can fail.
Okay.
There's a hole on these, pretty much every floor beam all the way through here. So
The dates on these, that's just when they were noticed, or
that's how we keep track of it. Every time when we come back the next time, we'll look at that writing and decide whether or not that hole has actually grown or not.
And has this bridge undergone any major renovations?
This thing was built in 1940 something. Everything that's done to this bridge from now on will be a Band-Aid.
So it's kind of like throwing money into a car that's not worth as much.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Throwing money into a 20-year-old car. The National Bridge Inventory has a 0 to 9 scale, and this bridge is rated a 4, which puts it in deficient category. We will close it when it gets lower than a 3.
If they were to lower the weight limit or close the bridge, where would be the nearest crossing?
It's the only one within 100 miles or so either direction.
How much time would that add to a trip?
I'm guessing probably 4 hours to their time.
Multiply those 4 hours by just the 6 trucks we've seen crossing the bridge in the 20 minutes we've been here, and you've already got one full 24-hour day worth of lost time and wasted gas. Then multiply that by the rest of the trucks on this route every day, and multiply that by the number of bridges in similar shapes statewide, and finally multiply all that by 50 states and 365 days a year, and you can see how the American trucking industry claims to lose some $60 billion annually just to lousy infrastructure. But a big old chunk of American shipping is still done by exactly that, shipping.
Bro, I don't even want to walk over that bridge and motherfuckers are driving fucking tankers over it, okay? They're driving 18-wheelers over that shit, dude. That's America, baby! Time to crack over my motherfucking that motherfucking Mountain Dew and forget about America's problems, baby!
Its initial engineering was done by Mother Nature. The man-made infrastructure on our country's waterways is as old and dilapidated.
Yeah, I know. I'm so soy. This shit is really hard to open. Hold on, let me put it in my koozie, brother. In my motherfucking koozie, brother. Hold on. Hold on, brother. Home of the free because of the brave.
Dilapidated as its terrestrial counterparts.
Tastes
The Army
like
Corps of
America.
Engineers operates a network of locks and dams that allow cargo boats, barges, and pleasure craft alike to navigate the country's rivers both upstream and downstream from one elevation to another. This is Locks and Dam 52 on the Ohio River. This is America's single busiest lock. And it's coming up on its 90th birthday. That's very old, and things do break and closures do happen. When they do, it costs our economy some $1 billion every year. How much of this job is just kind of like waiting around on something to happen?
I don't know. Some of it's waiting. It's the Army. It's hurry up and wait, but the river dictates this job.
We arrived at Locks and Dam 52, smack in the middle of another closure, which by this point has become routine.
A leak in the busiest lock and dam on the Ohio River. And once again, river traffic is at a halt at 52.
Now, usually the water would be up to the top of the wickets when we get it all the way closed off. But last night, we're trying to raise the dam all the way to the pier. We got a hold of a wicket, and it came up sideways. When we let go of it, it washed over a couple other wickets and went downriver, so we lost that one. So we're going to regroup. We don't know
Wickets,
exactly what
brother,
shape it's in until we
wicked.
dive on it and pull them
Like
out.
when you do something that's PogChamp.
It's a 1927 dam, so at any time we could have a catastrophic failure, which is going to cost more money. It's a budget nightmare, I'm sure. We're kind of falling apart, but...
The whole point of the locks and dams system is to prevent the river water from becoming too shallow for a boat to pass through it. While many of the 100-year-old parts still work fine, like this vintage Jazz-era steam engine,
back in the 1920s, they were a genius when they built it.
the parts that don't can cause some serious headaches, not just for the lock tenders, but for all the boats upriver.
All those are those towboats.
Damn, how many is that?
A lot. That wraps around for several miles.
That's normal?
Bro, it's like major news what's happening in the Suez Canal. Turns out, like, in America, on any given moment, on any given day, you have Suez Canal type fucking gridlock.
Yes.
Huh. But what's bad traffic like, if it's normal?
150. Wait.
I hope they've got some good books.
Hey, them boys, they're creating jobs over there, brother, for the stuck boats, for the step boats that are stuck. You know what I mean? Those are step boats, step brother boats. Nobody cares about the step boat economy.
Cruisers of 52 have lasted as long as 18 days, and the consequent boat jams aren't just irritating, they're also expensive. Even having one boat wait here for 15 hours has been estimated to cost its company $80,000.
We just have a lot of traffic here. This is the busiest lock in the United States. It's busier than the Panama Canal. Everything's coming through here. This is America's economy.
Lock 52 is supposed to be replaced with the state-of-the-art dam back in the 90s, but it's still under construction. And this is just one out of a whole network of locks and dams on one river. The Army Corps of Engineers estimates that it needs a minimum of $5 billion worth of repairs to keep the entire inland waterways system navigable over the next 20 years. And for corn farmers like Paul Jeske and the rest of our agricultural heartland/breadbasket, there isn't really an alternative.
These elevators are right in the best place you can possibly be to have the cheapest transportation for export. That is why we're so incredibly worried about the locks and dams going down.
Who absorbs the cost of that?
That either has to be paid for by us getting a lower price for our grain or paying more for the other inputs that we buy. The only source of that money, in my opinion, ultimately is the farmer.
Even when the waterway's older infrastructure is working, the scale at which shipping technology and output have grown in the last 100 years has far outstripped some of its capabilities. We're about to pass through Lock 21 with a towboat pushing 150-foot barges. These young men will do is break off 9 from the 15, push those through, and then the boat will push the other 6 through and rejoin until the next lock. Most of the United States' locks and dams aren't big enough for larger barge tows to pass through altogether, so they have to be split up and reassembled at every lock along their route. So now the boat's in the lock, the deckhands are going to break apart the 2 sections of barge. It's kind of amazing how low tech it is. The guy up top of the line is called a mule because that job used to be done by mules. No disrespect, but I just feel like they could give him a better title at this point. As slow-going as the waterways can get, they're still far and away the most efficient and really the only sustainable way of shipping cargo at this scale. If this were all to be shipped by a train or trucks, how many would this take?
With a 15-barge tow loaded at 9 foot, that'd be 225 jumbo hopper cars on a train, 870 semi-trucks. Whoa. So that'd be 11 and a half miles bumper to bumper to move what's in these barges.
That's crazy. Once the barges make it through all the locks and dams to the bottom of the river, they still have one more piece of faulty infrastructure to contend with before their goods can be shipped abroad, the Port of South Louisiana, also on Dan Slane's infrastructural fix-it list.
This is the major export port for the United States. When you think about 31 states, most of them are shipping grain and agriculture down here. I mean, it's unbelievable.
It's also pretty nice of France to sell it to us for so cheap.
Right.
What's going on down here?
The major problem here is the silting at the mouth at a place called Southwest Pass. And the Corps doesn't have the resources to keep it open to a level of 50 feet draft. That's the new ships coming through the Panama Canal. So in 2016, they had to lower the draft to 41 feet. For every foot you lower, you lose $1 million in cargo. When you multiply 7,000 ships a year, the number is astronomical, making us less competitive in a global environment.
The river becomes less viable to the ships that are being used.
So it's the exact opposite when people say this will make us, like, infrastructure makes us less, this kind of infrastructure spending will make us less competitive in the international marketplace is the exact opposite. If you fix our dams, you are able to, for example, carry more weight on your cargo ships, which ultimately makes for more efficient transport, which literally will end up making you more competitive in the international marketplace. So
you're going to have less of that tax revenue because people are going to take their ships elsewhere, right?
It's just a downward spiral.
Slane was pumped to see the administration tackle this downward spiral until it became clear that his list of infrastructure priorities was not itself a priority.
When did you realize that the administration was kind of not taking your
February of 2017. My list was shelved at that point. Their approach is to take most of the infrastructure, dump it back onto the states, and they know that the states don't have the funding. The states are not going to raise taxes, and it's a way to coerce the states into using public-private partnerships, having Wall Street finance infrastructure. The conflict is Wall Street wants the maximum return on investment. When you have an asset that is the public good, you want...
What he's describing is the same problem we run into with public education, the same problem we run into with the USPS, the same problem we run into with, and this might come as a shocker, Amtrak. The government is big. The government is inefficient, I guess. It's not cost efficient, but the government is a necessity. It's the same exact problem that you run into with healthcare as well. It's supposed to be costly because you're not doing it for cost efficiency. You're doing it because it's a necessity, okay? And ultimately, it yields significantly better returns for all workers, and ultimately, it yields significantly better returns on any sort of investment that you might make into the American economy as a corporation.
But the minimum return on investment. So this is their plan, and it's going nowhere, and nothing will be built.
Unfortunately, the Trump plan, as you have heard, is a sham.
The president has said he wants to spend $200 billion. I'm not quite sure where those dollars are coming from.
We're not going to be part of this budgetary flim-flam and pretend you can pay for roads and bridges just out of thin air.
I could have started with infrastructure. I actually wanted to save the easy one for the one down the road. So we'll be having that done pretty quickly.
Whether Trump intends to get to infrastructure quickly or down the road, or if these words are somehow supposed to mean the same thing, not having done it right out of the gate may have been a big oopsie.
I tried to convince them to come out of the box on January 20th to do infrastructure. In my opinion, it's the single biggest mistake the president made. And I think if he had done that, he would have been invincible in November.
We're going to get this infrastructure going. $1.5 trillion.
Too much bureaucratic bullshit in a bloated government takes too long to do anything is such a fucking dumb take. Yeah, the government does have bloated parts, but it's mostly a fucking meme, okay? Like, there are inefficiencies that are supposed to fucking happen. You look at that, and then you act like every part of the government is just corrupted by the bureaucratic process. Whereas there are so many fucking jobs that are completely worthless within the private industry, the private sector as well. Yeah, vaccination efforts in the past years prove against that. Exactly. These motherfuckers just blew past every check mark or every like what's the term for it? I mean, they did an incredibly good job with vaccination efforts in America. There's always going to be bloat. There's always going to be bureaucracy, but ultimately, claiming that like everything the government does is every metric. Sorry, that's the word I was looking for. You said earlier that some people argue that more infrastructure spending equals less competition. How the fuck does that work? No, those people are fucking stupid. Can you explain what you mean by some aspects of the government being bloated, being useful? No, bloat is not useful. I'm saying that, of course, there is going to be bloat. Of course, there's always going to be bloat. There's bloat in the private sector as well. People make it seem as though the private sector's efficiency revolves like the private sector is incredibly efficient in comparison to the government, and they're so much better, blah, blah, blah. And then they forget that monopolization efforts literally go against exactly what you're talking about. They fail to consider the lack of safety nets that very efficient companies like Amazon will subject their workers to because they can. And then beyond that, a lot of these white collar office jobs are not necessarily efficient. They're incredibly bloated too. You just fucking sit there and you watch me on twitch.tv because my boss makes $1 and you make a dime. That's why you watch the HasanAbi stream on company time. That's just how it is. Anyway, speaking of which, it is top of the hour every hour. It's time for a 60-second ad break, the first of the day, boys. I'm going to finish this video after this. But if you'd like to no longer see any ads, you can subscribe by purchasing a $5 subscription, support the channel that way, or you can subscribe for free. You can do it with an Amazon Prime by connecting your Amazon Prime account to your Twitch account. You get one free Prime subscription a month, and you will no longer see any of the ads. Here's the ad now. Here's the 1-minute ad now. Get those primers, boys.
Investment in American infrastructure. We probably have to wait till after the election.